up, everybody? Welcome back to the MasterMinds Podcast. I am KWebb. I'm here with my boy C-Life. What's up, sir?
What's up, man? How you doing?
Ah, I've been better. I've been
Bet you
better.
had better days.
I've had better days. Um, two reasons. My nephews was up here with me this past week, and so I put them on a plane this morning back to Alabama. So a little bit sad because of that. But then another thing is last week we touched on what was happening in Ohio.
Hmm.
The 10-year-old girl that got pregnant and the murder of Jayland Walker. And after that, I was contacted by a reporter who was doing a story on the events surrounding Jayland Walker's murder, and I was quoted in that article uh, as with my thoughts about what was going on or whatnot. And I got a couple of emails from people who um, were didn't like some of the things that were in the article, didn't like the author's point of view or perspective on it. And I had a conversation with one of the gentlemen that emailed me, and it was a respectful conversation. It was informative. It was insightful. But that conversation
Why do I
lets
get
me
the
know.
feeling that you're trying to like butter up the conversation?
What do you mean?
Like you're trying to be really charitable in your reading of the conversations.
Yeah, no, because I really believe that this guy, the intention is there. I think he
Okay, okay.
wants to understand, but I also think that sometimes our differing social locations don't allow us to see things that are easily identifiable to a different culture, right? So
Hmm.
some of the questions, some of the perceptions that he came in with would so I'll say it like this. In the article, where the article was entitled an ingrained fear or something like that.
Okay.
And in the article I basically said I can understand Jayland Walker running without going into the details of what happened or what was going on. I can understand a young black person who makes the decision or whose body makes the decision to say run, because
Okay.
in certain situations it's like damned if you do, damned if you don't. If I stop, it's not going to go well. If I run, I got a better chance and it still might not go well. And so in the article I expressed that, and the guy emailed and was like, I'm disappointed in what was said in the article, or better yet, what was not said in the article. And then he started bringing up,
So
um,
let's back it up for our
okay,
audience a little bit.
okay,
Okay?
okay.
The article, friends, is in CNN. Okay, so
Mhm.
Kerwin is being is being humble, and it's called "An Ingrained Fear for Your Life." Black men say they understand why Jayland Walker fled the police. Okay, so in the article, Kerwin Webb said he knows the terror that young black men experience when being pulled over by police. Webb said tensions are often high and adrenaline is rushing because, in too many cases, black people have lost their lives during police encounters. So he understands why Jayland Walker ran away from the police.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's the actual uh that's a little bit of synopsis from the actual article. Definitely go check out your boy K Webb on CNN,
Oh man.
speaking truth to power uh in these dark times. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Yeah, yeah. So there's that. One of the emails was like, "I have an issue with this ingrained fear. Where does it come from?" And the guy that I had the conversation with also was like, "The fear must come from the media, and it's the media that's causing this." I was like, "No, I don't believe the people that I work with, the people who I um, uh,
Mm.
see on an everyday basis care about CNN, MSNBC, Fox News, or any of it. I doubt that they're reading these things, but." Their fear is coming from their lived experience, the things that they see and live through every day. Um, and so even just that framing that this fear must come from something external that the media is doing is sort of like not understanding the terror that people live under. Um,
Hmm.
and so it was
So
an informative conversation. Go ahead.
let's give him the benefit of the doubt. What he meant to say was that it's the media showing traumatic video footage of black people being gunned down in the street, and they're seeing, I don't know, a police put his knee on a brother's neck until brother dies, cause a traumatic effect. And so that's what he meant by the media. He meant the media outlet being able to show the many stories in the many contexts across the United States of America where black people are killed by the police.
So I want to be fair to him. I want to be fair to him. And it's not necessarily just the media showing these things, but his contention was there are certain parts of the story that are left out, and he believes
Mm.
it might be intentionally as a way to paint the picture in a certain way. Because Jayland Walker did run, he was unarmed when he was murdered, and those things are all true, but leaving out the fact that there was an apparent gunshot that came from the car, there was some suspicious things that he had done, makes it seem like he's just innocent. And so if you add those things in there, the public would have a different perspective on it. And so he's saying by media outlets in not telling the entire story, they make it seem like police are just out there targeting black people. I think
Oh,
that's more of what his concern was, that it makes it seem like, oh, he's just a DoorDash guy that's running from the police and is murdered, or chased by the police and is murdered. Whereas a more honest telling of the story from his perspective is this person was suspicious. He had run-ins with the law the night before. There was a gunshot that came from the car, and so on the police radio, shots fired, and so that's gonna automatically heighten the responses of the police officers and that type of thing.
oh, so somehow uh, wearing a ski mask while running from the cops makes it okay for you to be shot 60 plus times.
Well,
Got it.
because if you're wearing a ski mask, if you're running from the cops, and there was a gunshot, it is likely that you're armed. And when you turn around, I don't know if you're shooting at me. So yes, that would make it easier to understand, as opposed to just saying that he was unarmed, because the cops at the time that they shot didn't know he was unarmed.
Oh, okay.
So and so look, to be fair, okay, yes, right. If you add that in there, it makes it different. But not adding it in there doesn't change the facts of what was reported, right? So both sides can be true. And
Oh,
it's largely what what would I like for this story to say? And that's kind of what I got from the conversation, is like, I would rather you say it this way as opposed to the way you said it, because the way you said it makes it look worse. While if you
mm.
said it the other way, it might smooth it over a
It
little bit
looks a
more.
little bit better
If
if we can demonize the person that was wrongfully shot and killed.
See, I didn't want to go to that because I don't know that that's his
I'm just
intention.
possibly not, but in a really plain language sort of way, especially it seems like it's better for you to be armed with an actual long gun and to be white than for you to be black in a ski mask. Got it. like it's better for you to have actually shot and killed multiple people in a church and to have an online racist manifesto and to be white than to, I don't know, allegedly fire a shot outside of your car fleeing the police. I mean, wow.
Um, we had our conversation lasted about an hour, 15 minutes or so, and I got insight um into his thinking, and I will agree that there are oftentimes parts of high profile stories that are left out, and
Hmm.
of course, right, journalistic discretion and all of that stuff, how you want to tell a story and things.
Yeah.
um and this gentleman's point was that media personalities or people who have platforms who fail to look at the details of things, they do a disservice to the conversation about race relations in the country because they paint a different picture. And I ended up saying, so there's an ingrained fear on the part of people who are from the non-white community when police uh, show up. But there's also the same type of ingrained fear of black people, which is why they are perceived as threats no matter what.
But also, I think that that's a sort of um, misstep in the conversation because when we compare, um, we're not comparing Jayland Walker to, I don't know, some random white guy in a suit on the side of the road getting pulled over by police. We could probably make those comparisons with black people and the experiences between how we are stopped by the police and how our white counterparts are stopped by the police. But that's neither here or there. The point is, when we say, well, this happened in the Dylan Roof situation where he was treated this way and he was actually a criminal, right? Where we had actual evidence of things that he had done, and this happening in the case of Jayland Walker, who was in some suspicious activity. We're not comparing someone innocent to someone guilty. We're comparing two people who, in the social view, are involved in some sort of malicious activity. Okay, so we're not you know talking apples and oranges. In this case, it's similar. It's similar, at least allegedly. Again, we don't know what he was up to or what he was doing because we never got the chance to ask. Right, so it's the conversation is not about um, any other misstep he had with the police prior to this one event, because in any situation you can't say that. Okay, if I a cop is not going to know that I have priors when they start chasing me. That's not how that's going to work. They're in a high speed chase. Okay, so they don't know what he had prior to this. They weren't even sure if he actually fired a shot outside of the car. That's been alleged for maybe it's been proven now. I haven't read the most recent article on the case, but my point is that, I mean, someone who can't see well needs glasses. Let's just put it that way. And in circumstances like this, we know at least two things blur human vision, and that is wealth and socioeconomic status and upbringing and skin color. If you're not African American, you're not perceived by as black in the general public or a person of color, you're not going to have the same experience, and your view is going to be different. But also, if you're not part of a community uh, that has a lot of black people in it, your experience is not going to be the same as well, right? So if you've been your experience as someone who is understood as black in a predominantly white setting is not going to be the same as someone who is understood as black in a predominantly black setting. That's just a fact. Okay, so um, it just so happens that I don't think we apply rules of logic to these sorts of conversations because again, my comparison was not Jayland Walker and I don't know, it was some random white guy. My comparison was Jayland Walker and Dylan Roof, and we at least know that Dylan Roof did actually commit more heinous crimes than Jayland Walker, regardless of what you're going to say he's done. He did not kill anyone, as
Nine.
far as we know.
Yeah. So it's
Zero.
interesting.
He has
It,
zero
it,
bodies on his belt. Okay. If he did have priors, and if they were even violent priors, that has nothing to do with him being shot 60 times on a different day by different police on a different shift.
yeah. So that it's interesting also because we talked about the Dylan Roof situation, and he talked about how the reporting on that, what what people understand to be the reporting on that, is not necessarily factually accurate, and went into the nuances of the differences because the what is understood or what is said commonly said is that he shot up the church and then police apprehended him without issue and then took him to Burger King to get food.
Yeah, yeah,
And he was saying that that didn't happen. They took him to the jail, locked him in a conference room with an officer watching him, but legally, because he hadn't eaten in 3 days, they had to give him food and water, or else he could have, on appeal, said that they violated his rights for not giving him food and water. So somebody went and got him a hamburger.
and you know what? That would have been a violation of his rights. And the point is, certain people's rights you aren't violating, and other people's rights you are violating. Listen, ain't nobody. I don't think anybody's upset that old boy got a burger. Okay, no one would care. No one would have noticed that he got a burger had it not been for multiple black people being killed. That made us look and say, "Wait, how
How
come
was it?
white criminals are being treated a different way than black suspects?"
Yeah, yeah. And
That's the question.
you and I touched on this in one of the podcasts last season where we were talking about white privilege, and you said that it doesn't exist. It's black dehumanization as opposed to
Yep.
white privilege. Um,
I
so
still stand firm on that. I think it's a perfect example. I'm not
yeah,
saying that Dylan Roof shouldn't have got something to eat. I mean, he's a human. He deserves to eat. I'm
yeah.
saying that my brother shouldn't be shot 60 times.
So
So,
I just want you to know that I use that now. I've changed my thinking on white privilege, and I've shared that with a couple of different people. I was like, no, I had a friend that actually helped me to see that white privilege doesn't exist, and they look at me like, what the what? And then I explained it to them, and they're like, huh, you're right. So I give you credit for helping evolve my thinking here.
well, I mean, I
But
I just it's just something that I find crazy in times like this. I wonder, was the person could would you feel comfortable telling our audience whether the person you was talking to was a person of color or someone who was not a person of color?
he was not a person of color.
Not a person of color.
Mhm.
And so here's one thing, two things I want to point out. Is that KWebb was able to offer a sort of grace and understanding, and I think rightly so. Okay, because he's not black. It's no way, no real frame for him to understand being judged by the color of your skin in a immediately negative way and subconscious way. He has no frame of reference for that.
Right.
No frame of reference for experiencing the cops in any other way than as a public servant. The cops are who I can call if I find myself in a bind. Black people don't think like that all the time.
Right.
You got to come up in your socioeconomic status and be around some of your vanilla brothers and sisters for a little bit before you recognize, hey, maybe I can call the cops or speak to the officer when I got a flat tire, right? Maybe the officer's not harassing me, but up until that point, I mean, you're like, listen, I'm not calling the police. If I'm in trouble and I call the police, I'm just gonna be in more trouble.
More trouble. Yeah.
Like
It's
this,
gonna end up worse for me.
it's gonna compound the issue that I already have, right? So that's not that's not where we immediately go. But I'm glad that you were able to extend that grace, uh, and that you even spent your time to speak to someone, especially given the cultural climate on the other side, who challenged your perspective. Um,
So as I'm talking
if
to
I
this guy,
continue talking, it's gonna get. I'm gonna start saying things I shouldn't say.
wait. So as I'm talking to him, I'm thinking like, you know what? He might be a good guest.
Maybe,
He might
maybe,
be a good guest.
maybe.
But
Oh
so
man.
all of that just is our preview and our intro into why they run. Like that's what this one is. This
Yeah.
today, why they run. And I in the article I did say that if I was asked what would I counsel young people when they're engaging the police, and of course I told them all of the boilerplate stuff, right? Be respectful, yes sir, no sir, all of those things, right? But I also made sure that I say that even if you do all of those things, that's no guarantee, which is why I can understand why people would run. And you said something about the you asked me about dog, if a dog came running at me. What was that thing that anecdote that you were
Oh,
giving?
when we were kind of prepping to have this conversation, I raised the question of, if you've ever had a dog or anything that you were really afraid of, that you have uh, maybe a spider or a snake or something that would you would be afraid of if you seen and you were in close proximity to. But I use a dog because if you run from a dog, normally the dog's going to chase you. And so if you're afraid of the dog and you run from the dog, my question to you when you were telling me the story of you running away from the dog was, when did you know that you were going to run? Like when did you make the decision to run?
When I saw the dog in like coming around towards me and was not looking friendly at all. I see it and it's like, okay, let's go.
And
Because
it was a response,
mm-hmm, yes.
nearly a reflex, because that's what our body does, right? You can't one of the reasons why um one of the reasons why black people run from the cops, and this is, watch this, as the preacher in me would say, because they're afraid. Like that's why they run away, because they're afraid. And all the things that we've seen and witnessed as a collective nation affirm that fear.
But that's media bias. Someone would argue that that is media bias that causes you to see that and be afraid.
And okay, it doesn't, even if you make that argument, I mean, there's different ways where we can dispel that. Okay, first and foremost, all black folk don't watch the news like that. That's first and foremost. The other thing is, before we saw the news, we had an apprehension towards the cops. There's songs about that from a long time ago. Do we remember NWA? F the police. Where do you think that's from? Right. So this is not something that's brand new in black consciousness. Okay, this is, it's got over multiple decades of people being um, tense around police officers. But I can't lie that in the most recent, um, I remember when we was at Princeton, I put on this blue blazer. You know how they wear like the blue blazers with the white shirt. You know what I'm
Hmm.
talking about? And I think I embodied my early Princetonian because I was on my way home and I was in the car with one of my boys, and the police stopped me, and I did everything wrong in that stop. And my boy looked at me. He was like, "Bro, I know we in Princeton, but like this,
Don't do
you
this.
know, you not white, right?" And I was upset. I was furious when he said it to me. But thinking back on it, I'm like, man, that was a dangerous thing for me to do. All of the things that I've done, but the things that I was doing, he was able to note that it would have been okay for someone who was white to do. So I wasn't doing anything that was illegal. I was doing something that in our conscience we've been trained not to do around the police. Like, I don't know, get out the car when you're not asked, or reach for your wallet,
Before.
or try to have some dignity when you're talking to the police officer, as opposed to, yes, sir, no, sir, right away, sir. Right? So I said all of that to say that in the recent, since then, I have to be honest, since then, and seeing all the things that have been happening, the most recent time where a police officer stopped me, my heart was racing, I was sweating, and my hands were shaking. Okay? Now, this was all, I didn't think of to do any of this. This just
It's by
happened to me when it
yeah.
stopped. It was so bad that when the police officer came to the window, he literally said, "You're going to be okay."
Mm, mm. Wow. So they
That's not
recognize
from the
it too.
media. That's not from the media. I don't watch the news every day. That's from me hearing the sound of black folk dying throughout the nation by the hands of the police and not really knowing when you're safe and when you're not safe. People in the area that I'm in right now, white allies were stopping when they saw black people being pulled over by the police. Stopping, pulling out their phones and recording.
Wow. Wow.
Now that's all media bias. So I just showed you. I just talked about my own experience of heightened anxiety. I just talked about white allies' experience of heightened anxiety.
Yeah.
So even if it you say that there's some sort of media bias, the media shouldn't play these tapes on the TV, or they shouldn't, continue to chronicle these stories. Whatever you want to say, that doesn't deny the real fear that
That.
people have.
Yeah.
And the real fear, so if I have that fear, knowing that I'm innocent, I got a clean record. When I was in the military, I had a um, top secret security clearance. Okay, so I'm not, my record's good.
Hmm.
And if I can feel that, then someone who potentially is doing something they shouldn't be, even if it's just having a gun that they should not have, or having a gun that they can have but don't know they can have by law, right? So just even stuff like that just heighten the level of fear. Now you're racing, you're driving away from the police. You know that it's fear. You know how you know it's fear? I stop the car and get out and start to run on foot.
Because like I can outrun them on foot as opposed to me in the car.
I have a better chance getting out, being surrounded by multiple police cars, and running than staying in
Yeah.
my car and continue to drive.
Yeah. Um. It's it's a conversation worth having about how we see things, and how these things go down. And you were sharing with me a video. Um, Talk to me about, let our audience know about that before we go to that.
So part of that fear that we're talking about is not just come from the immediate of what we see and what we hear in the news, which does actually have a negative impact on us and can create symptoms, real symptoms of post traumatic stress. But there's a scholar, uh, I believe she's a therapist, but also uh, a social scientist. She's a researcher as well. Dr. Joy DeGruy. Dr. Joy DeGruy wrote a book, Post Traumatic Slave Syndrome. And in it, she wants to explain that post traumatic slave syndrome is really an exploratory theory. It's a way of understanding what impacts African American thought post slavery and what slavery did to the African American mind, even after um, years of no help, is what she says. So we were free from slavery, we had no help. And we were in slavery, we had no help. And then we were free from slavery, we had no help. No help to really understand what had happened to our people, understand what we had lost in our culture and our language, in our family, just real basic human things. And her point is that all of this has an impact, and it doesn't create a pathology. It's not a disorder, but it's something for us to explain why we experience the world as black people the way that we do. Why, for instance, our levels of cortisol are higher even in our sleep. With that, black people produce more stress even in their sleep, um, and in their subconscious mind. And how when we look at uh, immediate history within our time frame, we can see how stories that we hear about our people and about our loved ones negatively impact us. If you hear something traumatic happen to someone you love, it's going to hurt you. You're going to think about it. It can cause emotional, psychological, and even some sort of physical response. And so her point is that for African Americans, descendants of enslaved Africans brought to this country, this impacts the way that we view the world and the way that we see ourselves in the world and the way that we live in the world. So that's just a brief synopsis. I would highly recommend uh, this book for your friend that was in the interview with you, and anyone that needs help kind of getting a lens and is more of a scientific mind. Like you need the research and you need the evidences. I think this book will be helpful for you, but also I think will be helpful for African Americans to read, because I think that it gives voice to a lot of feelings that will otherwise be suppressed.
Yeah.
So let's
Here's,
let's hear a clip from her.
yeah, I think this is going to be good. Um,
PTSD is a disorder that occurs as a result of a single trauma. You don't even have to be there to actually get a diagnosis of post-traumatic stress disorder. You could just hear about something horrific happening to someone you love. So you have people who have experienced it firsthand, people who have witnessed it in their environment, right? People who are continuing to be oppressed. That exacerbates any possibility of healing.
so you don't have to be there, you don't have to experience it, but seeing it happen to your loved ones, to your parents or grandparents, or for those who live in New York City and the stop and frisk policy that I
Yeah,
could just ride up on anybody, throw you up against the gate, right? These are the things that cause that fear, that response. And I was, while I was encouraged that this person reached out, and in the email to me, he was saying that he was disappointed with the things that the article left out, but
hmm
that the only way for us, this divided nation, to heal, is to have more honest dialogues about it. And so I was encouraged that he reached out and that we were able to have that dialogue. But in listening to his understanding, and there were statistics that he was sharing, it seems to me that there was this underlying need to justify, or as we've seen in several cases, to put the victim on trial.
Hmm.
Um, this person wasn't innocent because ski mask running from the police, shot a gun. Something must have been. So if we put ourselves in the mind of the police officers, yes, there's a threat. There's something going on there. He even talked about Philando Castile,
Okay.
who told the cops, "I have a gun on me," and the cop told him, give me your ID, this, that, and the other. And so this gentleman said to me, and this is kind of where I was like, "Wow, that it's just." Um, he said people mistakenly think that he was legally carrying a concealed weapon, and then he said these two things: he wasn't legally carrying a concealed weapon because when he applied for it, he checked when they asked had he done any illicit drugs or whatnot. He checked no, and so that was not true, which means that was a forged, or his permit would not have been issued had he checked yes. That's number one. Number two, the officer said that he smelled weed coming from the car, which meant that Philando Castile was probably under the influence, and so even when you have a concealed permit, you can't be under the influence and legally carry your weapon. And so those two arguments are there because he was like, so the media is portraying it as someone who was legally carrying, and he wasn't legally carrying because there was a forgery on his application, and he was not supposed to have a gun if he had.
What? Oh my goodness. And you said that you think that that would be a good guess. Here's the problem. And I'm sorry. I have to say something about this. Okay? One, if he did, and I don't think that he did, but if he did, check the wrong box. That has to be proven. Like that you can't make a statement like that is unfounded to suggest that he filled out a fraud. He was committing fraud on his application. You don't know this, brother. You don't know what he did. Okay, so that's unfounded. And then the second thing, smelling weed in his car does not mean that he's actually under the influence. That's also unfounded. There's ways to test and to verify if he was under the influence, but that and still nothing justifies that situation. Am I
And
wrong?
no, 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 you're right. And to be fair, he said that cop was just nervous and jittery, and he should not have been a cop, and he was totally in the wrong for that. But to say that Philando Castile was legally carrying is not true.
Even if he wasn't legally carrying, okay, the punishment for illegal carry is not death.
And that's what he said. He said he shouldn't have gotten killed for it. But
But
his thing going back to the narrative, the media
the
narrative,
the,
it's
the
not telling
narrative is there. The narrative's irrelevant. The narrative's
well, no,
irrelevant.
no, because it fuels in an incorrect fear of the police, as if cops are out to just kill innocent black people.
Oh my goodness. I mean, listen. Like I said, there's certain things without glasses you can't see. All right, certain things without we make microscopes and we make magnifying glasses to help increase our awareness of things in the world. And I just think that in this case, it's a similar situation. Potentially, reading a book like uh, post traumatic slave syndrome might help to begin to open up the eyes. Now, don't get me wrong. I think the media does sway stories.
Yep.
We know the media sways stories. That's why you have a Fox News and you have a CNN, for example. Okay, so no, the American public, we're not confused that the media does this. In fact, it's probably terrible that the media does this, but they do it. Okay,
Profit
nobody's
motive.
confused about that whatsoever. They are trying to spin a story, and they know if they tell the facts, there are going to be people that say things like, well, you know, he shouldn't have had a ski mask on because that could be really scary. Is there some truth to that? If someone, I see someone at night with a ski mask on running, I'm going to be nervous. Okay. So I will concede that. Still, 60 shots. You're talking about people who are armed. You're talking about people who have been trained enough at least to hit someone 60 times. You're talking about people who have bulletproof gear on. Okay, so they're not unprotected. They're not untrained. Um, this is, as far as we know, I don't think any of them were rookies. Um, but as far as we know, they've had some run-ins with people before. They've been doing this job for a little bit. They're public servants and they're held to a higher standard. Believe it or not, this happens with 18-year-old kids in the military. Okay, so if an 18-year-old kid in the military is responsible for every shot that they fire, how much more so? And that's, you're talking about someone in the military who, in the case they are firing, is firing at a national enemy and a national threat, still fully responsible for every bullet that they shoot. So if they're responsible and you that can happen as young as 18, how can we not hold police who are policing civilians responsible?
So then that we can close this out on this part. What do we do about healing the divide or helping people who can't see put the glasses on?
I'm gonna leave that answer up to you. Personally, I don't think that that's. I don't know if that's the best use of our time and energy.
Okay.
I mean, I think if I'm having a dialogue with you and I'm expending my energy to explain these things to you, that's showing a certain level of care. Okay. Now I'm prayerfully hoping as I'm opening my ears to hear from the other side and have this dialogue with you that you're doing the same thing.
Right.
Um, but if you think that this is just happening, black anxiety of the police is just happening within the last, I don't know, 10 years, then you need to do more reading. This not something that just happened. Okay. So it's like, give give your what I can say is give the other side the benefit of the doubt that they do have arguments that are logically consistent. How about that? And I think we all do well to approach a disagreement that way. Let's give some mutual human respect to the other side. That there are, even though there's two positions that are seemingly in opposition, they're positions held by actual humans, and we should think good. We should think well. We should give them the benefit of the doubt until we see otherwise in that particular person, right? So let's kind of stay away from trying to caricature people based on their ethnic heritage and ethnic history, right?
Mm.
So we don't want to get into how you gonna tell me about violence? Your people the most violent in history or nothing like that. You know what I mean? So let's try to give each other the benefit of the doubt. Like you're someone I'm having this conversation with, so I want to respect your opinion and respect where you're coming from. At the same time, give me that same respect by just doing your due diligence to study because I learned about your folk in history class,
Mm, mm.
right? So I is whether I like it or not, I've already kind of been introduced to your opinion.
Indoctrinated.
Yeah. So I've read your scholars. I hear your perspective at every turn. Just dig a little bit deeper. Hear from some of um, some people on the other side that are actually, thinking about these things and putting their energy, their time, their research, and really their livelihood into expressing them.
Wow. Yeah, I think that'll go a long way, if we can get people to do that. Um, because most times it's just I'm dismissive of your scholarship because you didn't check the boxes that uh, I believe you should check, or
Yeah.
didn't go to the places that are reputable in my eyes, or you're not saying the things according to the history that I know. Um, so, is there hope? Or so bringing that person or building those bridges, you said that's not the most appropriate, that's not the best use of energy and time. What would you say would be? Where would you rather spend your time and energy if you were attempting to make changes in this polarized world?
Forging a new path is where I intend to spend my time and energy. Um, and as cliche as it sounds, to the question, is there hope? My hope is built on nothing less
Nothing less.
than Jesus'
You're so
blood.
churchy.
I am calm, Churchy. That's fine though. But I say that to say this: there is a polarization built in a racialized world intentionally because the people who built the racialized world intended for it to polarize. It was supposed to be a distinction. It was supposed to be a distinction that's nearly irreconcilable. That's what that's what race was created to do. So I think that for us to think that there's a way for this sinister thing to be redeemed when it isn't built off of anything. It's literally built off a collective illusion. Race is built off a collective illusion. And until we start recognizing it as an illusion and rejecting what it has done, I don't think that there is a way. Uh, or how about this? I don't think the hope for that idea is any sort of reconciliation or integration. I think the hope for that idea is the polarization of two races and the money that it yields on both sides and the money that it yields for the moderate to talk about things like integration and reconciliation. It's a moneymaker in my opinion. That may that may be a real morbid view. Um, I don't see it any other way though.
Um,
Can you?
integration.
I'll put it this way: Can you use a gun for sports and target practice? Sure, you can. Was it created to do that? No, it's created to kill people and to kill things. That's like guns were created to kill things better. Okay, like so, that's what it's intended to do. Now, whether that thing is a buck, some sort of other large game animal, or another human, guns were created to kill, right? So, in the same way that guns were created to kill, but enthusiasts can do other things with them, other things that we might even say are cool or good, like sports practice and being a good or skeet shooting or something like that. The same way, race was created to polarize and to uplift some understanding of whiteness. That's what it's created to do, to push down non-white to uplift white.
So we have to
Can it
eliminate the
do
race.
other stuff? Yeah, it can do other stuff, but it will always do well what it was created to do.
So we have to eliminate the races if there's hope.
Oh, we need to move outside of a racial understanding of ourselves and other people.
Okay.
That's it. I mean, we've had this discussion. I'm pretty sure we'll return to it back and forth again. But it's saying things. For example, blacks are not a monolith. Perhaps black isn't a good category to discuss these sorts of people, right? like because there are tons of difference, right? Perhaps it's better for me to say um, this human is Jamaican.
Mm.
Perhaps by me saying that they're Jamaican, I'm saying something more about their culture than I
Yeah.
would be saying than if I just say they black.
Yeah. Yeah. But then by doing that though, you a lot of and I think what Dr. Guru said, we lost a lot
Yeah,
in the slave trade, and so what would I be, right? I can't trace my roots to the country in Africa that my foreparents descended from. So can I be anything other than black?
I
Because
would
then
say
even
yeah. I don't think you would like what I would say, but I would say I would say yeah. If anybody can call themselves American
it's the
other
black.
than the indigenous of the land, I think it's the black folk. Like if anyone else can, I mean, what part of American culture has been built absent black folk? None, none. Not cuisine, not music, not art, not literature. None. From the inception of America, blacks have been as critical, and if not more, than whites.
To its yeah founding
Right?
and so
Like if a white person could look me in the face and say I'm American, and I can clearly see that they're not indigenous, and they will tell me I'm not an indigenous to this land, then how can you say that you're American then? You're not saying I'm one. Well, I mean, there are some people that do, but the majority of people are not saying I'm one quarter Irish, a fourth Polish. Um, I have a little bit of Cuban in me, and you know what I mean. Like they're not doing all that. People say, yeah, I'm American. So if
yeah
you can say that you're American, how come people that um,
built America.
how come we can't use the same term? The reason why we can't use the same term is because when you say American, you want a further distinction of black or white, and that's the
Mm,
racialized conscious. So you say white American, black American, but the white and the black is not the same. It's not the same category of American. American is reference to a land, to a nation. White and black is reference to what?
that illusion that you were talking about.
Yeah, it's illusion. You're using white and black to refer to an ancestry so distant that you can't trace it to a particular people. Maybe you can place it to a continent and you'll say European American or African American or Asian American. But that's not even none of those are actually saying anything. How many nations are on the continent of
Oh,
Asia?
right, right.
How many countries on the
Wow,
continent of Africa?
wow.
How many people come from Europe? That's what I'm saying. These things aren't really
It don't mean
helpful.
anything.
Yeah, they're not helpful to speak about the person that's right in front of you. They're not really telling you much about the person, right? It'd be better for you to say, um, "I'm from Georgia" or "I'm from New York." I know more about your culture and more about who you are as a person by you telling me what state you're from or what general location in the United States you're from than you saying
Black or white or
black or white.
anything. Yeah.
Because even if you say you black, are you like Carlton Banks black? Or are you like, you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah. No,
which black
there's
are you?
gradations and variations there too. Candace Owens
If
black, Christian
Candace
Walker
Owens
black.
black, Colin Kaepernick black, Barack Obama black, what sort of black are you? Nas black, Jay-Z black, Biggie black. What Rick Ross black? Like what sort of black are you? But the same thing could be said of white.
Right, right.
Are you like Breaking Bad white? Are you more like Harry Potter white? Like you like you know what I mean? It's not even what sort are you like Sopranos white or Friends white?
Mm, there's a distinction for you.
You Tommy from Power white or you like I don't know Zach Galifianakis from Hangover white. Both depictions in culture of white folk,
But they're
very very
very
different
different.
white folk.
Yeah, man, that's good, and that's a whole lot to for us to ponder on and to ideate towards the breaking the collective illusion and moving outside. I wrote this down: moving outside of a racial understanding of ourselves and other people, like that. That's deep. So as you were talking, I wrote down this for possibly for next week. You can let me know if you like it or not. Integration and reconciliation, because I remember at the seminary I used to ask people was what were the civil rights leaders who were for integration, the King type, were they right or wrong? Um, and that spawned a lot of different responses. And it's funny because when I ask older black people that question, they're more um, they're more adamant and direct with their answers, whereas younger or middle aged black folks, they're kind of like,
Teeter
I,
tottering.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah, so it's a lot of emotions and a lot of you know self awareness that comes into answering that. The other thing is we've seen one side of history, right? So your dissatisfaction with one side of history may influence
the way that you
your deification of another side, right?
wow,
So, but it's both of the visions because they hadn't been realized were utopian.
hmm,
Both of the visions were utopian because they hadn't been realized. I just don't think that being on this side of history, we're obviously gonna look at the other side and say, well, but I think I think that's a good conversation for next week. Um, and I think that I'll be ready to to talk about that. I mean, I could talk about it now, but given the time, we
yeah, yeah, yeah.
should probably wrap this one up. Um, so final thoughts. What's your final thoughts on based on what we said, what we
Why
talked about?
I still understand why people run, and I maybe have to moderate my thinking on building bridges with people to help them understand, and maybe start constructing something different. That might be the shift that I need to make in my thinking and my operations so that I'm not fighting a losing battle. What about
Well,
you?
man, my final thoughts are, I think, um, if we were honest with our own humanity in these conversations, anyone can understand why someone would run. I mean, um, just I know this is extremely smaller, but my daughter is about to turn 2, and she recognizes um, that at a certain point of the day, when I'm coming to pick her up, it's nap time. And since because she does not want to go for a nap,
She runs.
because I'm physically bigger than her, she knows if I catch her, she's gonna have to go for a nap. She won't have a choice. She'll be physically carried to the place of nap time. So she runs, and she getting faster. So today, I mean, she was gone. As soon as I put my hands up, I'm like, come on. She was gone, running away. She would wait till I get almost to her and then take off in another direction. So I guess she was conserving her energy. Um, but that's just an example.
Yeah.
It doesn't take much thought to run from something that is unpleasant, to run from something, and that little kind of innocent unpleasantness is kind of a start off for fear. Like when you're afraid of something, you will try to flee from it. Um, so I think that if we were honest with our humanity, this people can understand. Unfortunately, media bias. Stop.
Hey, it can't just be normal. It's got to be something. But
I
thank you. Go ahead.
No, go ahead, go ahead. I'm done. I just said I
I,
had to throw that in there.
I was gonna say thank you for another engaging Masterminds podcast, and we'll be back next week to do it again.
Next week. All right, y'all.
Peace.